Hello, everyone, and welcome to Storytime with Stephanie. This is a segment of the Writer's Anointing podcast, and I am so excited to be here tonight with everyone. The Storytime with Stephanie is my platform to allow authors to be able to share about their stories, powerful testimonies that they have written and are sharing with the world. And so this segment is so meaningful to me, especially as an author as well, to be able to allow this platform for authors to be able to share their stories. And so if you're an author and you would love to be able to be a part of Storytime with Stephanie, you can email us at info@stephanieouten.com. We will certainly reach out to you and talk about your story. So the Writer's Anointing podcast can be found on every platform that you can find for podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, as well as Anchor. So be sure to follow us so that you can hear what we have going on from the Writer's Anointing to Storytime with Stephanie. We're so excited. So tonight's guest is Jamie Byrd Grant, and she is the author of the upcoming book, Triumph Over Tragedy. And tonight is a special night. It's June 7th of 2021. On June 7th of 1998, Jamie's father, James Byrd Jr., was viciously, brutally murdered by 3 white supremacists in Jasper, Texas. And Jamie has written her story to share what it means for the power of forgiveness and to truly triumph over any tragedy that comes in your life. And so I hope I can get through this interview without crying, but I want to welcome tonight Jamie Byrd Grant to the show. Jamie, are you with us?
I'm here.
Hello.
Hello, Stephanie. Thank you.
Hello, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us. And so, Jamie,
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want you to just start out by telling everyone a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, and why you chose to write this book, Triumph Over Tragedy.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. And Stephanie, thank you again for honoring me and my upcoming book, Triumph Over Tragedy. On this day, 23 years ago, on this day, my dad, James Byrd Jr., was brutally and savagely murdered by 3 white supremacists. A little bit about myself is I'm a wife and a mother of a 3-year-old little boy. Who is my pride and joy, is my everyday just shining star, and he keeps me going. I am a peace officer, and I like to say peace officer for a reason. I just have a heart for people, and the work that I have been doing so far is in my line of work is just sharing my story with people who did not live through the 1998 times that my dad was dragged. And the reason that I decided to write this book is because it's been a long journey, Stephanie, to be honest. And I am so nervous today because what today is. I have talked to you on several platforms, and you have seen the worst of me, the ugly of the ugliest of me. We have shared tears. You have seen the snot slanging. So I'm just going to be myself today because this is not an easy day for me. But I can say that on that day, 23 years ago, my life changed. And it changed by my dad being savagely beaten, taken to a predominantly Black neighborhood in Jasper, Texas, in Huff Creek. And he was tied to a big pickup truck and drugged for over 3 miles to his death. During that time, they spray painted his face with black paint. And that was perfectly to make a statement that they wanted to make in the East Texas town of Jasper. That day, I didn't believe it. I was in denial for days after that had happened because everyone in Jasper knew my dad. There really wasn't too many people that didn't know him or know of him. And to hear that something like that had happened to him was just, I couldn't fathom the thought of it. And it was just unbelievable. And that day, my life changed because I viewed a particular race of people differently. And at the age of 16, I had to fight those feelings because I knew that it wasn't the entire race that killed my dad. It was those three, and I would like to call them thugs, that decided on June 7, 1998, that it was fun to tie a Black man to the back of a pickup truck and drag him until his body was dismembered and decapitated throughout a predominantly Black neighborhood. And if it wasn't for a young Black boy who was walking to church on that morning, who knows what would have happened? This could have been a cold case, because things like that has happened, not to that extent, but there has been a lot of racial tension and racial unjust that has happened in the town of Jasper that has just been swept under the rug. So I'm just grateful.
Jamie, let me ask you this really quick, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but take us back to June the 6th, which would have been the last time that you actually saw your father, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Take us back to that day and tell us a little bit about what that experience was like, what you all were, celebrating, why you had gone to visit with your father that day, and just tell the audience a little bit about what happened that day and then the experience that happened on June the 7th.
Okay, now you about to make me cry.
Yeah, I already have my tissue.
Goodness. Okay,
but the reason I'm asking you is because this is to set other people free, right? And that was the whole process of you writing this story, sharing this most painful tragedy in your life. It was to truly set yourself free, but it's also to set other people free, and how the power of forgiveness and forgiving yourself, right? Because that's what this was. This was about you forgiving yourself will really help to change the trajectory of your life. And so take us back to June the 6th and what that day was like before your father was so savagely murdered.
Okay. So on June 6th, my mom, my sister, and myself was visiting Jasper, visiting my family. They had a bridal shower for my cousin. And my dad showed up hours after the bridal shower, and he did not want us to leave to go back to Lufkin, where I was raised and I lived at the time. And he was in a car with us in the back seat, actually with me, and he wanted us to visit his apartment that he was so proud they had just moved into. And I wanted to go back to Lufkin because a 16-year-old, I had plans. I wanted to go and hang out with some friends. And I told him that we didn't have time to stay in Jasper and that we needed to hurry up and get on the road. And so after going back and forth of him wanting to continue, wanted us to stay, he, as far as saying, hey, I cooked some steak, I want y'all to come over. And I had some words with him, and I end up telling him some very hateful words that I regret, up to this day, because those words came out of my mouth so quickly without a thought, not knowing that those words would be the last words that I would ever say to my dad. And I said that I hate you because I would go hang out with friends, just a typical teenager. And he was keeping me from doing what I wanted to do. And he got out the car, and that next morning, which was June 7th, we got a call. My sister answered the phone, and my aunt called and said, was telling my sister, hey, you guys have to get down here, son. And she just kept saying son. And my sister and hit the wall. And we end up going to Jasper. And when we got to Jasper, there was cars, media, sheriff, police cars everywhere. And I still was in denial. I didn't want to know what had happened. I thought okay, he's hurt, never thinking in a million years that this had happened to him. And so fast forwarding on to some days prior to his homegoing, I still did not know. I didn't want to know what happened to my dad, because I knew my dad was just that type of person. I didn't think nothing could ever happen to him. Everybody knew him. And days before, my cousin ended up telling me that he was dragged behind a pickup truck, and he was savagely beaten by these 3 white supremacists. And it seemed like life had instantly was just sucked out of me, because I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the last words that I said to him was that I hate him over something so selfishly thought and immature, I would say. And years later, I just never forgave myself. Yes, I was hurt, and I'm hurt because of what happened to my dad. I couldn't imagine the fact that he lived through a majority of that. But I was so hurt because those were the last words that I said to him. And okay. I often wonder, did he forgive me? Did he forgive me for that? Because I know that I shocked him. I shocked my mom. I shocked my sister. And again, I thought about it. I even shocked myself, because it just came out so quick for nothing. And he just, years later, I just beat myself up because of that. I often wondered, did he forgive me? And God came to me during the process of this book and said, I had to purge those feelings. I had to ask my dad, for forgiveness, and also ask God for forgiveness for, one, being disobedient and to my dad, and just being a child that a smart mouth, and I never said those types of words to him. I never even got in an argument with him, because that wasn't the type of relationship that we had. But in that moment, me just being selfish caused me to have years and years of regret. And that ate me so much inside that I just didn't forgive myself, and I couldn't process his death, because I was trying to process the hurt that I had, that the words that I had said to him that I knew that was hurtful.
So you spent years grieving. So first of all, when you found out on June 7th what actually happened to your father, you couldn't process it then. It took about 4 days, like you said, for your cousin to be able to express to you what exactly had happened to your father. You were still in denial at that point. And there were a couple of things happening to you at that time. You didn't want to believe it, right? And you also were still struggling with what it is that you had said to him the day before his death. And so all the years that you spent in that grief of not being able to forgive yourself, of questioning, did my dad forgive me? Did he know that I didn't mean it when I said I hate you? Living with regret, living with, could I have done something differently? What should I have said? Should we have stayed? If we stayed, would this have happened to him? Right. And at 15, 16 years old, how do you process that? Right. Even if you were in your 20s or 30s, it's still difficult to process. Right. But I know during the course of writing this book, in our first meeting, you actually just kind of shared your story with me. And I was very familiar with your father's case. I remembered it like it had happened yesterday, because when I heard about it on television, I just could not fathom that something like that could still happen in this day and age in America. I just couldn't believe it. Right. We think the last major thing I think I had heard about was maybe Rodney King being beaten. Right. But then to hear this story about your father in 1998, it was so sickening to me. It stayed with me for years. And so when you did come to me and share that you wanted to tell your story, one, I was fully overwhelmed, I'll be honest, because I thought, wow, how am I going to be able to support her in sharing her story of how she was able to triumph over this type of tragedy? I've never experienced any type of tragedy like this. I don't know this level of pain. But just being able to hear you share the story, and we worked through so much of the pain that you were still feeling, still dealing with. I just need to commend you for being able to go through this experience, because not many people can deal with something like this and come out on the other side. So I commend you, because you are a fighter, you are strong, you are a powerful representation of womanhood, and you are the epitome of forgiveness. Because I'll be honest, if something like this had happened to me and in my family, I'm not quite sure how I could get to that place of forgiving the what they had done, right? You want to be able to forgive the people, because Christ says we should forgive, but the act of what they did is where I would be stuck. And so you had some very specific reasons for why you needed to forgive. Talk a little bit about that, why you got to the place and how you got to that place of saying, it's time for me to forgive these three, as you said, thugs, these white supremacists who did what they did to your father.
Well, when I was 16, I had no shame in saying that I didn't forgive them. On any media platform, I was honest, open and honest, and saying that, yes, I want them dragged behind pickup to the extent of everything that they did to my dad, which was totally opposite than what the majority of family presented. And I remember going on the Mother Love show, Forgive and Forget, my sister and my sister was 27, I believe, and it seemed like to me, she instantly forgave. Everybody had their own process, but she got on there and she said, I forgive them. And when it came to me, I said, no, I don't forgive them. I hate them. And those were my true feelings. And of course, everybody looked kind of like surprised, because I guess at the time I was supposed to say the same thing, but that was not my true feelings. And so over the years, as I got older and in my 20s, I felt, okay, this is what I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to say I forgive them, but in my heart, I really didn't. So I was teeter-tottering back and forth. I was saying I was forgiving them, but in my heart, I didn't process that. And I knew I wasn't being true to myself and my own feelings. And it just caused me to be more broken on the inside. And what came to me was, I was 30. Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
I was having my baby, and I was laying in bed, and I was just praying to God and thanking God for taking me through this delicate pregnancy that I had prayed for. And the word forgive kept coming in my spirit. And I was like, okay, God, forgive what? And he kept telling me, forgive, forgive. And I didn't want to hear that word, because I knew then what he was telling me to do. But I was like, okay, that's not what I want to hear right now. And I kept overlooking it. And God said, you need to forgive. And in order for you to live a life of abundance, and in order for you to not bestow all that pain and hate and those bastards that I was having and on my unborn son, I need to forgive. I need to store all of that and restore myself. And I said, okay, God, you asking me to do a whole lot that I'm not ready to. And the day that I looked at my son, I said, I have to forgive, because God has given me this precious life. And I was so messed up on this side, torn to pieces. I don't look like it, and I didn't look like it then, but I was so torn to pieces because in my heart, I really hated these guys. It killed me to see an image of them. And just the thought of me, myself, doing something savage to them, I was willing to do that. And I knew in order for me to raise this little boy, in the way that God wants him to be, I had to restore my hatred in my heart, and I could not spill that over to him. And so that was the turning point for me on August 8th, 2017. I said, I have to forgive. Can't look back from this forgiveness. This is for me, not for them.
Yes. Yes. That's key. Forgiveness is not for the other person. It's not about the other person. It is for you. It is for you to be able to be restored. It's for you to be whole. It is for you to be complete. And it's amazing how God would allow your pregnancy and the birth of your baby to be able to restore that, level of peace in your heart, to be able to say, I forgive. And one thing that I think people always question or stress about is, well, do I have to go to the person and tell them I forgive them? And no, because the forgiveness has to come in your heart. If you choose to go and let that person know that you forgive them for an offense, that is up to you. And I would say, if you decide to do that, pray on it before you do that. But for you, that wasn't something that you needed to do. You just needed to make peace in your spirit, and you needed to go ahead and forgive in your spirit in order to be set free. Now, once you did go through that process of forgiveness, what were some of the things that you had to do to continue to stay kind of in that place of peace? Because you were, seeing stories, there was information coming up again about these three individuals who had participated in the murder of your father, parole, things of that nature. Tell us about how you were able to stay in a place of peace, even when all these stories continued to come up about where they were as far as their prison situation.
Well, for one, praying, I had to be equipped with prayer, because one thing the devil likes is for you to not go along with what God has for you, which is the promise. And so I had to stay equipped in prayer, and and surround myself around God-like people to keep me encouraged. My mom is the backbone of my family, and she constantly keeps me encouraged and tells me, Jamie, you wasn't raised like that. And so hearing those words resonate in my spirit keeps me going. Also, just in my line of work, being the change that I want to see, and changing that narrative, and not just talking about it, but actually boots on the ground and doing the work and being the change in the community, and letting people know that, you too can overcome brokenness. And hatred stirs up strife, but I just feel like love heals the brokenness in the individual. And if you always lean on love, you can overcome anything. And I have to tell myself that, because it's so easy when I see in 2038 this individual appeals. He having a parole appeal in 2038, and that may seem like a long way for some people, but just the thought of a possibility to be released into society, it doesn't sit well with me. So I have to continue to pray on that and know that everything is in God's hands, and He hasn't brought myself nor my family this far to defeat us.
Absolutely. I love what you said about, the promise, and how the enemy will try to keep you unfocused on the promises of God, right? And we can find peace in those promises. And so you knew what God had promised you when He told you to forgive, right? He told you that you would have that place of peace. He told you that you would have, your family restored, your family healed. He made those promises to you, and you rested on that. And that's a word for someone out there who might be struggling in that place of unforgiveness, right? And in that place of strife and hatred and anger and bitterness, that leaning on love, like you said, and resting on the promises of God, and even praying the promises of God over yourself, will allow you to be able to stay in a place of peace so that you can triumph over the tragedies that you experience in life. And so even in this book, you share about the process of having gone through what you went through with your father, and living through that experience, how it actually did change your life. And you became a peace officer, like you said, you became someone that now works out in the community, right? So that individuals who look like us may be able to see us out in the community doing good. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing and how you actually keep your father's memory alive through the work that you do every day.
Well, I work in a community atmosphere. I'm a community service officer, and I'll take us back to the May 25th, the day George Floyd. That was a very challenging time for me to even put the badge on. On that Tuesday, May 26th, I got to work, and I just couldn't. I didn't feel the honor and the pride of wearing that badge like I did 9 years ago. Because although George Floyd wasn't killed, or my dad wasn't killed, officers, it was the same for the same reasons, I guess I should say, because had he not been, it was a senseless death, and had he not been Black, I felt like George Floyd would still be living today. And that brought back so many memories, and I wasn't really equipped at the time to try to deal with. And so from that day forth, I just wanted to be walk in solidarity with not just the George Floyd family, but anyone in the community that is going through. Doesn't have to be a race issue. It could be a young teenager at 16 years old, father or mother was taken out of the home for whatever reason, or died in whatever capacity. That child, that 16-year-old, will have to live beyond the years trying to understand why me. Because I had many days of saying, why me? Why my family? How am I going to pick up the pieces? What am I could have gave up. I could have done. In my book, I talk about the many things that I could have turned to, but I just that wasn't going to bring my dad back. But I had to stay prayerful. I had a praying mom, and I keep telling you guys, my mom prayed for her 3 children. And I think without bringing her up in the church and having a praying mom as I do, and just the love and support of my family, I don't know if I'll be able to sit here today in front of you and speak those positivities into anyone's life, because it is hard. It is a challenge. So my daily walk at work is, just speaking my life, saying, hey, if I got through it, you can get through it. I got through many obstacles. Even in my line of work, I've had my car keyed by officers. I've had my car put on flat by officers. And so I know that this is because of who I am and what I represent, but it's not going to stop me from speaking peace and unity in life into others that is willing to give up because of something that happened in their life.
I'm flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted and not surprised all at the same time by what you just shared. Even though you wear the same badge, that those who don't, those who wear the same badge as you would still, do things to accost you, to pose, harm to you or your material possessions. It's disturbing to hear that. But we recognize the times that we're living in. So we understand that these are all tricks of the enemy that, will come in to try to throw us off of our game. But the purpose that you have here on earth, the purpose in which why you wear the badge. And so we appreciate and honor that you wear that badge with pride, and you understand what that badge truly does mean, so that when you go out into the community, it doesn't matter what people look like. It doesn't matter what their race. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. It doesn't matter. You are there to bring peace, to restore peace, to ensure that communities can be safe for people to live in and work in. And so we just honor that. We respect your decision to carry that badge. And I know that your father is proud of you for wearing that badge and for the work that you do, and for the work that you continue to do to make sure that whether it is, someone wearing the badge or not, that peace is restored in our community. And so one of the particular chapters, and I'll share this with you all, Jamie's book has not yet been released. It's almost there, but we will actually be taking pre-orders tonight on the book. We'll be posting it out on both of our pages. It'll be here on the Storytime page, on the Stephanie Outen Literary Doula page. It'll be on my personal Stephanie Outen page. It'll be on Instagram and all of Jamie's social media pages as well, because you all have to support this book, right? So pre-orders will go out today so that you can go ahead, and when the book is ready and out, you can get your personalized and autographed copy. But there's a particular chapter that I want Jamie to talk about, and it's the last chapter of the book. It's a movement, not a moment. And Jamie, there's a lot of comments coming through. I know that some of them have been popping up on the screen, but you are so loved and so supported. Monique says, "Love you, cousin. I'm so proud of you." We have other posts that say, "You got this, sis." You are so loved and supported. I mean, by the numbers of people that are on tonight and all the comments that I see coming through. Thank you for sharing your story and your journey with us. You are so loved and supported. And so I'm grateful, that God has gotten you so far over all these years to be able to tell this story. And yes, it still brings tears, and that's okay. Just the fact that you are able to walk out this walk in the way that you do it, with positivity, with pride. Your father is honored. Your father is proud. And your father is just shining down on you now, just saying, well done, well done. And so I want you to talk a little bit about that chapter. It's a movement, not a moment. And that was a chapter that you free flowed. You were able to write. You were writing that chapter in particular because of the fact of the things that were happening to our Black people in society, the George Floyds, the Ahmaud Arbery's, the Breonna Taylor, and the list just goes on and on. And I feel myself getting frustrated, so I need to calm down. But in light of all the things that continue to happen to our people, you wrote this chapter because you wanted people to understand that these things that are happening, these senseless murders, whether they're happening at the hands of people that carry the badge or not, it has to stop. And we as people have to come together and form a movement around it to make it stop. And it's not just a moment. George Floyd in the 9 minutes, and I don't even remember how long, because however long it was too long, right? But it is not just a moment, people. It is a movement. So I want you, Jamie, to talk about that, the purpose behind why you wrote that chapter, and what it is to come together, and how you want people to really rally together to make sure that these lives that are being lost every day, that it is not in vain.
Yeah. And it goes back to the day that George Floyd was killed. Like, just that, I felt like a muzzle was over my mouth. Like I was somewhat silent. Like I couldn't even talk that day because I was so disappointed in everyone. Like as far as we've come, I feel like we've taken so many steps back. And just to reminisce on when my dad got killed, and just seeing over the years, they would, show May 2nd on his birthday. They would say, James Byrd Jr. And of course on June 7th. And so it was out, and then all of a sudden nobody talks about it. And that's why I wrote it's a movement, not a moment, because we have to stay firm, and we can't just, once it goes away in the news media, then it's on to the next person. And then what are we doing next? We're back out marching. So it's like we have to do better, one, by checking on each other. And if you see something, say something. Don't be one of those bystanders that, yes, it's good to record, but try to safely, stop an act that is unjust. And I just couldn't fathom the thought that this man was killed in broad daylight and nothing else happened. Nobody did anything. And every day I go through the and I just talk about, we have to do better as neighbors. We have to do better with not so much as witnesses, being a credible witness. It's no such thing as you're snitching if you're helping a situation. And in the Black community, because I do work predominantly in a Black community, we don't do that. We'll see something and won't say anything, but then we be the first ones to want to march and protest. And so we have to do better with checking on each other and being that voice. And so that's what I consider myself. I'm that voice, and I chose to work in the area that I work in because I wanted to be that face of change, that face of that voice that's going to bring the realness, and not somebody that hasn't gone through anything, just sitting up here talking to you, because I know what it's like to, not have your loved one a year or two later mentioned, because that happened to me. It broke my heart, Stephanie. And I told you, when everybody was talking about say their name, and my dad's name was nowhere mentioned. And I, and it was like piercing my side, because I'm like, how could anyone forget such a horrific death that my dad went through? We have hate crime bills in my dad's name, and nothing was mentioned of him. And so that's also what motivated me to write this book, because it wasn't easy. Stephanie, you're my witness. How hard it was for me to pour our feelings into this book. And I knew that if I didn't write this book, then I was doing myself unjust, and I was doing my son an unjust, because he needs to read this book. My nephews need to read this book. It needs to be in the schools, because this type of information needs to be shared.
Absolutely. You mentioned about the hate crime bill. Can you hear me, Jamie?
I can hear you. Sorry.
Okay. You mentioned too about the hate crime bill that was in your father's name. And I know through some of our conversations as well that you had even been working to try to get his name, I think, as a monument in a park that's in that local area. And even that was a struggle. And so, as we think about some of the things that we can do, and I know you talk about being the change that we want to see, and this is a movement, not a moment. What are some of the things that we could do as a people to be able to support, you in the work that you're doing, especially to make sure that when we do say their name, that James Byrd Jr.'s name is recognized amongst that list of people whose names need to be said, who people need to remember experienced such a horrific death. What are some of the things that we as a people can do to support? Because again, like I said, that park where you were trying to get, his name in a monument there has been just a struggle. What can we as a people do to support you in helping to make sure that his name is remembered and memorialized, especially in the local area where you are?
Okay. Yeah. Well, first, purchase my book, share my book with everyone. I don't think 10 and up should read this book, because you don't know, kids that are 10 years old, 15 years old are going through this. I talk about restoration, being renewed, just the journeys of life, rejection. All these things kids are going through, relatable to all ages, 10 and up. So purchase my book. Also, stay tuned for a launching of James Byrd Jr. Foundation for Kids. And KIDS is an acronym, Conquering Invisible Dreams. And this is a foundation that my siblings and I wanted to start for ages 10 to 25 as a mentorship to young adults who need mentoring. You need that. You need those men models in your life. You need that Black female police officer that you're not used to seeing in your community. And now you can identify with her and possibly one day maybe a police officer and don't think it's impossible. Also career readiness, all of those things we are skill training that we will be mentoring and having the opportunity for those individuals to learn throughout the James Byrd Jr. Foundation for Kids.
Very good. I love it. I love it. And so for those of us who are not in that local area, I'm sure that we can do so much to support you virtually through donations, like you said, purchasing the book. And so we'll make sure that on all our pages that we share that information, especially as you give us more information, we'll share it out because we want people to be able to support and we want people to be able to be involved in making a change in, you know, our community and making sure that children have an opportunity to grow up in safe environments. I see some other comments coming through of individuals talking about that forgiveness piece. I think that's weighing heavy on a lot of people tonight. I mean, I can understand why, because forgiveness is such a deeply rooted thing that we have to work through. We have Annette that says, yes, forgiveness is for you and not for them. I saw another comment come through from Patrice where she says, I'm fighting with forgiveness for more than 4 years and it's so hard. What would you say to someone like Patrice who says she's been fighting for 4 years? And Patrice, I fully understand because there were areas in me where I knew that I was still wrestling with unforgiveness. I was holding on to unforgiveness for specific people in my life. And it was because I could not seem to break through that wall to say, you know what, that I need to be able to forgive because it's tying me up. And when I was able to recognize and get to the root of why I couldn't forgive, that's when everything changed, right? So we need to be able to dig up the root of the unforgiveness so that we can address it, deal with that root, cut that root off with an axe, and then be able to get to that place of truly forgiving so we can move forward. So what would you say to someone like Patrice who's been wrestling for 4 years with unforgiveness so that she can break free to that next level?
I would say, Patrice, trust the process. And that's something that I have to keep telling myself. Someone else's process will not be your process. You're not going to heal. It may take you 23 years like it did me. Who knows? But trust your process and be true to your own feelings and don't fight your feelings, because those feelings, if you try to hide those feelings or suppress those feelings, they're going to come back up in some way, some form, or some fashion. So I would say just trust the process and know yourself.
Very good. That is so true. Because your process of forgiveness, Jamie, took from 15 to in your 30s, right? So that was a long journey of walking through a space of forgiveness. And so what I like to tell people too is it's in God's time, but you have a choice to make. You can decide to stay in unforgiveness and be locked up forever, or you can just say, you know what, it's time for me to forgive. So just like Jamie said, trust the process. What is the process that you have to walk through? Sit down and understand what that looks like for you so that you can get to that place of saying, I want to be set free. That's what forgiveness is. I want to be set free. And this is the choice I'm going to make to do that. And so I thank you for sharing that, Jamie, because you made that choice. When you had your baby, you were like, enough is enough. I'm ready to forgive. And so Patrice, who's also known as Opal, when you get to that place of saying, enough is enough, I've been fighting this for far too long, I'm ready to forgive, you will see yourself unlock to get to that next place where God is calling you to go. So just sit with that. And if anyone else has any questions that you want to ask, now is the time. Jamie is more than welcome.
Patrice, you will feel so. I didn't realize how much pressure that was on my shoulders. Like the day that I forgave, it just seemed like things just started opening up for me because I'm a natural private person. And then with this happening to me, I didn't know who to trust along the process. And so I became more guarded than I ever was, because throughout this journey of living with my dad being killed, I ran into so many roadblocks from family members to clout chasing media activists. And I talk about all that in my book. And I just became this guarded person, didn't know who to trust. And so once I purged all of that, and once I said, I released all of that, I felt free. I felt like God, I should have did this a long time ago. But because a part of me, I was going back and forth. I was 1 minute I forgive, next minute I didn't. And the reason that I was going back and forth, because I was mimicking what the majority of my family felt. And I knew that was not my true feelings. And so that's why I always say, be true to yourself, because your timing is your timing. And you will know when it's your time, because God will, like that forgiveness word that God placed in my spirit. I wasn't asking for that. It came at a moment where that's not what I was asking for, but he gave it to me anyway. And he told me that I needed to do something with that word. And I decided to forgive.
And the whole thing, when I think about the title of your book, Triumph Over Tragedy, you had to make the choice that, I want to overcome. I want to triumph. I don't want the tragedy to define me, right? And so whatever it is that might be holding you up in this place of unforgiveness, any of you, whether it be Opal, whether it be, anyone that's on this line right now, if you're in that place of saying that, when we don't forgive, we say that the issue is bigger than us. The issue is bigger than us.
You give it the power. Yep.
You give it the power. And I saw a comment, I think it was Kathy, said, forgiveness is your power. Right. Yep. So I love that. Forgiveness is your power. And it's true. When we get to the place of saying, I forgive, we conquer the enemy. We literally stomp on his head, because he wants to stay in a place of unforgiveness, right? Because he knows that that unforgiveness is going to lock us up. It is going to prevent us from being able to walk into our destiny. It's going to prevent us from being truly free to live the life that we've been called to live. So he wants us to stay in that place of unforgiveness. But when you recognize that forgiveness is your power and it's your superpower, and you use it and you throw forgiveness on like your cape, then you are actually able to fly free, right? Free in your own spirit to do all that you have been purposed to do. So Opal, aka Patrice, I hope that helps you. Anyone else that is struggling with unforgiveness, I hope what Jamie has shared, what I've shared, has been helpful to you. And Jamie, your family's here. There's your mom, brother, and sister are here supporting you, and your niece, and they said they love you. And so that is awesome. We thank you so much. Now, one of the things I did want to say, and just to remind everyone again, we are going to be there's a link that's running across the screen now for Jamie's PayPal. You can go ahead and we'll send all the instructions on what you need to do to purchase in the pre-order stage your copy of Triumph Over Tragedy, and continue to follow our pages. We'll let you know when the book is going to be released. And those who order in pre-order, you'll be the very first ones to get a copy of the book, personalized and signed by Jamie. And what I want to do now, Jamie, is for you to give those who are listening some encouragement if they are facing any type of tragedy. And most specifically, anyone on here who is a parent of a teenager like you were, 15, 16 years old when your father was murdered, and you face a litany of issues from rejection to abandonment to unforgiveness, the hurt, the pain that you were going through. Monica says, what keeps you in a place of forgiveness? Yeah. So I want you to share all those things back. What has kept you in this place of forgiveness where you can still be firm that you do forgive those three individuals? Remind everyone what keeps in that place of forgiveness. But also what would you give as encouragement to that 15-year-old, that 16-year-old, and their parent who may have to walk them through that process of experiencing the tragedy and how they can overcome and triumph over that tragedy?
Mm-hmm. For as a 16-year-old, and I actually wrote a chapter to that 16-year-old that may be going through any unforgiveness, any tragedy in your life. You know, at 16 years old, you're somewhat an adult, but you're not an adult. So I would say that for that 16-year-old, just to take one step at a time, because, you know, don't make any, I would say, overt changes that would cost you, you know, a lifetime of hurt and pain. And, you know, find peace within the pain that you're going through. But I had to keep myself, I had to find peace within that pain, you know, being that 16-year-old, being that 17-year-old that was nominated for homecoming on a homecoming court 3 years in a row and could not have my dad walk me on the court. Becoming an adult and getting married, never had my dad walk me down the aisle, were moments of my life where, you know, I would just ask why, you know, why? And I had to get to the place where I would say, you know, instead of why me, you know, just say, you know, thank you, God, for carrying me and delivering me this far. And although I did not have my dad to walk me down the aisle and on the homecoming court and to attend graduations and things of that, those special moments, you know, just be thankful and grateful in the people that are a part of your life, that are somewhat stepping and being that beacon of light. And so I would just, that 16-year-old, don't give up, because you will look back and you would say, you know, you have made it through life adversities. And what I look at, I look back and I say, God, how did I do it? But I did it by the grace of God, and only by the grace of God, and by staying steadfast in my beliefs. Also, you know, by finding peace within yourself, you know, it unblocks so many blessings that God has in store for you. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
And I look at my life, I look back over my life, and I didn't know that I would be sitting here today talking a book that I so long yearned to write. I thought it was impossible because I didn't know where to start. And sometimes when you don't know what you don't know, you never start. But I thank God for Monica for introducing me to Stephanie to start this journey. Because it was a dream of mine from as a young kid. At 16 years old, I always said I wanted to write about my dad, but I didn't know where to start. And then it went from writing about my dad, life and death, to writing about my journey and peace. So never give up on your dreams, because no matter how long it took me, 23 years today, I can say that I have triumphed over the tragedy that struck in my life 23 years ago.
Whew, that was powerful. Yeah, I'm trying to hold back the tears because when Monica did introduce us, and actually Monica Fortson is, she was on Storytime with Stephanie a couple of weeks ago, and I'm so grateful for her as well, and grateful for that introduction, because what you did was something that I tell people is so important. You were able to write to heal. You were able to write this story to get on that path of healing. And writing for me is cathartic. It has been something that got me through very painful places in my life as well, very painful situations. And the power of writing and sharing your words can be so healing. And so for those who are experiencing, whatever kind of tragedy or painful situation, something from your past that you still haven't been able to fully process, I would encourage you to write it out. You do not have to be the greatest writer in the world to write your story. You do not. All you have to do is make that commitment to get that pen to the paper and allow the Lord to lead you in what it is that you need to write. It's your story. No one can tell it better than you. So write it out so that you can get to that place of freeing yourself like Jamie did, right? She finally said, I have to write this out. I have to get this out. One, because she wanted to leave a legacy, right? Not just for her father, but for the children, her family coming behind her that needed to remember her father, but who needed to understand how she was able to overcome this situation, because they're going to walk through situations in their life too, and they're going to need to know how to overcome. And why not her to be able to carve out the path to be able to get them to that place of freedom along their journey? And so if you are challenged, if you are hurting, if you're in pain and you really do want to heal, I would encourage you to do just what Jamie has done and what so many writers do, is to write yourself through that place of healing, because it truly will get you to the other side. And so I am so honored again, Jamie. Go ahead.
And when I just add to that, because when I did start writing, Steph, know that I kept trying to, what was taking me so long, because I wanted to make sure that it was all grammatically correct. And Stephanie was like, just write, just write, just write. And that's the perfectionist in me. I was like, nope, I cannot send her this with all of this. And once I got to that place where I did trust her in that and just wrote, I mean, stuff just started flowing and things started coming back to memory that I think I even thought of during this 23 years. And I started finding peace in other areas that, again, I just overlooked. And God will bring so much to you to light that you would need to purge out. And so I started purging all kinds of stuff, not just the forgiveness towards those three demons, and asking my dad to forgive me for the words that I said to him that night. I even forgave my dad for some things that was holding and tugging on my heart that I felt like he didn't do in my life, that I felt like he should have did. And so things just started coming up, and I just felt so relieved and renewed and restored once I started just free writing and flowing. So anybody, I have a vision board every year. And during this process of writing, I did a vision board of my dad. And that in itself, I didn't know I had all that, those archives, papers, and pictures, but just looking at a picture brought back a memory that I needed to speak about in my book. And I'm at a place now where I feel just so renewed in this, because I am such a private individual. And so I feel like, by me speaking about it, it's helping me even in this today. It's helping me in my healing, and healing doesn't come overnight. It doesn't mean that just because I forgave them that, okay, now my life is just, I'm not going to have these feelings of pain and hurt. It's an everyday process. It's an everyday process. I woke up this morning and I just fell to my knees and I was like, God, thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for giving me the strength to be able to speak about something that has been such a journey for so long on this day. And I just never thought that I would be able to put my life, my feelings, and my triumphs over tragedies into a book be a healing to someone else. And so this is strictly what my book is about. It's for healing. It's for people to understand that they too can overcome adversities.
Yes. And you said it best. And so you answered Monica's question about what keeps you in that place of forgiveness. Gratitude. Gratitude is what keeps you in that place of forgiveness, being grateful every day for the life that you have, for the breath that you have in your body. And no matter what tragedies come, the fact that you are still here means you still have purpose, means you still have work to do, means that you still are on assignment. And so to be grateful and stay in that place of gratitude is what keeps you in that place of forgiveness. And Renee says, chills, speak, baby. And so with that, I just want to say thank you, because I know it's not easy. And I know there was a point where you had just totally given up on doing interviews and things of that nature. And so I thank you for trusting me with your story. For trusting me with your story, and to be able to bring it to the written format. I just honor you and the work that you did throughout this, because it's nothing short of amazing when someone can be able to put words to their pain, but then put words to that place of peace. And you were able to do that. And so I'm thankful to you, Jamie. I am honored that you allowed me to walk on this journey with you. And I know that this book is just a start to so many things that God has you getting ready to do. Because I see you on stages, in healing conferences, to be able to walk people through a place of healing. And so I just pray that and speak that life over you, that the destiny that you thought you had is even greater than you could ever imagine. God has so many dynamic things in store for you. And this was what you needed to do for him to get ready to take you to that next place. So thank you for your obedience. Thank you for your obedience, and thank you for being my guest tonight. And to your father, James Byrd Jr., for planting the seed that is you. We thank him. We honor him for the life that he lives. We thank your mom and your family for the love and the support that they have given you throughout this process, because there's nothing like family that literally will uplift us and be the wings that carry us to the next place. So we thank your family for being your wings, your husband, your son, your mom, your sister and brother, all your aunts, cousins, uncles, all of them. We thank them. And we just say, Jamie, the best is yet to come. And I do mean that in every way. The best is yet to come. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll let you have the last word. What would that be?
I would just tell